Sam Kahn, theathletic.com. There he is. We've missed you for the last, couple of weeks. You grind throughout the football season. Of course, it never ends. It's like the NFL now, 12 months a year. What did you get away? Did you go on some little sneak away trip or anything?
I wish. I've got 2 kids in school, so I can't go anywhere until spring break. So I caught up on the rest of my personal life here in this house and did some overdue cleaning of my office. It may not look like it in the back there, but did some overdue cleaning of that and just trying to get my personal life in order. So because that, especially once we hit December and the portal opens and the playoff begins, everything that isn't those 2 things kind of goes to the back burner.
Sam, a lot of things in the kind of in the ether right now when it comes to college football. One of them is the impending death of spring football. Like I don't think it's an if anymore, it's a when. Do you think that maybe by next year we're at OTAs?
I wouldn't rule it out, certainly. As I talk to people, and I've been talking to a lot of different coaches this last week, actually along those lines, I hope to do something in the next few weeks or month on this topic. There's definitely a sentiment that we should push toward more of an NFL model of getting rid of spring football, stop putting on the pads in spring, because as long as there is an April transfer portal window, what you trot out in spring is not your team. That is, there could be, depending on how active you are or how many players you lose, you could have 20 players interchanged from spring to when you enroll in summer classes in June and July. So I think there is going to continue to be this push. And as long as there are multiple transfer portal windows or that window exists in the spring, there's going to continue to be a push for this. And I think the Matt Rule comment that he made about Nebraska canceling their spring game because players are poached, a lot of the coaches I've talked to feel like that's a little overblown. Not to say that coaches are not looking at spring games to scout, but a lot of these evaluations are done off game tape, not necessarily spring tape. Certainly you could see a backup pop. The one that I think of was a couple of years ago. Malik Murphy at Texas had a really good spring game because we had no tape on him the year before. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden he got a lot of attention in the portal. Actually, wasn't in the portal, but he got tampered with and never did enter the portal until the following winter. But that seems to be an exception. I think just in general, the utility of spring football as the calendar's gotten later is starting to be outlived. Also, when you think of the teams that just played for a national championship, or you think of teams that just played in the semifinals, and we're talking about getting them back on the field in 2 months, it seems a little ridiculous, to be honest with you. So I do think we'll be better if we get toward an OTA model and doing maybe freshman mini camp, kind of like they do rookie mini camp, and then we do a mini camp for veterans. And then in June, when you have most of your roster set, which you should by that time, then you can start to do a little bit more padded type stuff.
It's been a few days, Sam, but you had written about this, and I think we had talked about it maybe previously, but James Blanchard staying at Texas Tech. They come to an agreement after the overtures from Notre Dame. We talked a good bit about Texas Tech yesterday, and just that they're all in, and they're hyping it up, and they're embracing it, if anything. I mean, they're saying, like, yeah, this is all in for us. But in this day and age where we're seeing these GM hires more often and interesting names being floated around out there, how big of a deal do you think this was for Texas Tech, and just your thoughts on him deciding to stay in Lubbock?
Yeah, I think it was big. I think it was big from an imaging standpoint more than anything. Yeah. If they had lost James Blanchard, it certainly would have been a big loss because he has been so integral in putting this roster together, one that they hope will take them to a Big 12 championship game this year and maybe even the college football playoff. And I know some people will say, well, we're making all this hubbub and spending all this money on, a program that hasn't really won more than 8 games. True, but they are still in a better 3-year stretch than they have been since the Mike Leach era. This is a program, while not great or elite, they are certainly on better footing than they have been in a long time. Joey McGuire is a big reason for that, and James Blanchard is a big reason for that because of the roster they put together. So I think they would have been able to find another GM that would have been accomplished, that would have been very good, and that would have done a fine job. But Blanche and Joey are really tight. They're very much in lockstep. He was the first hire that Joey McGuire made when he got to Lubbock. He was the guy on the plane when Joey landed to take the job. I think that's very important, and I think that symbiotic relationship is really important in this day and age with a coach and whoever's managing the roster. I talked to James earlier this week. He said he called it the toughest decision of his life. And he said when Marcus Freeman first called that his inclination, he was going to take the job, but that he wanted to see it through, that there was, he's got family down here. He's got roots down here. And he said that even if they would have gone and won the national championship in Notre Dame, he still would have been sad because he would have not seen what he called his Frankenstein come to life in Lubbock, because this team, the last 3 years, has been built by him and Joey and that personnel staff with Brian Nance and Sean Kinney, all those guys. And they've all been there this whole time. And this is kind of the culmination. They had 2 top 25 recruiting classes. Now they have a top 5 portal class. And this is it. They're putting all the chips in on this run. They got 2 high-priced coordinators. This is the year to see it happen and come through. And I think he really wants to see that through. And that was what I got the sense from him, is that leaving that behind was going to leave him with at least a little bit of buyer's remorse. And he was going to wonder what if he didn't see this thing all the way through.
Yeah, and we're going to start having some coaches, et cetera, on here pretty soon as far as with spring drills, not that far away, depending on which team and when they start. But, yeah, they talked a lot 2 years ago when they ended well, and it didn't start but they kind of were more disappointed, even though they've been to a bowl game every year with Joey. This year was a little bit more consistent. Obviously, the loss at home to Baylor is something that hurt. But they do seem to be that thing that they've never played for the Big 12 title, and you were in that order, that is killing them right now.
Protect your online privacy with NordVPN. Browse securely, access content from anywhere, and keep your data safe with military-grade encryption. Whether at home or on the go, NordVPN ensures your digital freedom. Stay secure. Download NordVPN today at nordvpn.com. That's NORDVPN.com.
Yeah, it's real. It's real. And that's why I mentioned this when we did the story last week, and when he decided to stay, I said it's easy to look at the 23-16 record over the last 3 years and be underwhelmed. But that's the best 3-year stretch they've had since Leach was there. This is not a program that is a consistent championship program, and they are trying to elevate themselves in class from middle of the pack Big 12 program to consistent conference championship contender. They're not there yet. They haven't even played for the title game, but they at least are now on a footing where they're going to bowl games every year. That is a start. And getting back to that is getting back to what they were in the Leach era. Getting back to if they can have a sustained run of success that they did in the Leach era, then you're talking. Then you're actually talking about a program that's relevant. And in this Big 12 with no Texas and Oklahoma, a program of the Leach caliber that we saw in the 2000s, that's one that can win a Big 12 championship. If Texas and Oklahoma didn't exist back then, Mike Leach would have a few Big 12 championship rings on his fingers.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the first, of course, Mike Leach was able to bust through it's West Texas wall because he was an innovator and he was Mike Leach and he was just somebody you'd want to play for. And between Mike Leach and Joey McGuire, nobody did that. They were getting pummeled by the big thing of, well, it's so far out there. It's West Texas. And so this is a group that's committed. It seemed from the beginning, every time we talked to Joey about, no, this is a college just like any other college program. Most colleges are in little towns in the middle of nowhere. So come because it's awesome. Don't come because, don't not, but come because it's not that. It's very interesting to me how they've attacked that particular narrative.
No doubt. And, I talked to Cody Campbell about this. You guys obviously know that name. They're head of their NIL collective, and he's on the board of Regents. He's a mega donor, big name out there. Cody has said and told me, I think when we talked this winter about the portal class, that the way that opposing schools recruit against Texas Tech from a location standpoint actually works out in their favor, because he said they undersell it so much that when players get there, they expect it to be just dirt and tumbleweeds. And so then when you show up and you see the Womble Football Center and you see the indoor and you see the new South End Zone facility, it's like, wow, this is actually pretty nice. It's actually pretty cool. And then you back that up with the fact that now they are as well funded, certainly in this class, as almost anybody in the country from an NIL standpoint. From a roster standpoint, this is going to probably be, I think Max Olson published it last week or earlier this week. They spent more than $10 million on the portal class alone. And when you consider that all the other guys on the roster are getting paid already, you could be looking at a $20 million roster. We heard that number thrown around with Ohio State. I assume, I don't know the financials on all their other ones, but I would assume we're not going to be far away from it. And when we get to the rev share era, that's the cap, is the $20.5 million is what we're estimating. Tech is going to be at that cap. That's where they're going to play, because the Matador Club and Cody Campbell are invested in that way. So you combine that, okay, it's not as bad as everybody who is not there sells it as, and then you add in the facilities, and then you add in, they're going to pay you top market. They were beating out SEC schools and Big Ten schools for transfers in December. That is unheard of. And the bigger reason for that, in addition to all those other things, is that they were paying top dollar. They were willing to play the game from an NIL standpoint. So you add all that, and then you add a coach who is very charismatic, who is very energetic, who I think is easy to get along with, personable guy. And so you have a really good face for the program on top of it. So you have really all the pieces you need from that standpoint. So in that way, that is what has made them successful in this last portal class and in recruiting.
Sam, do you have an ideal overseer of college football? I mean, we were talking a little bit about the dot article. And everybody's talked about a college football commissioner, czar, leader, whatever term you want to use at some point or another. But it does sort of seem like there's an overhaul coming, especially when it pertains to the power conferences, quote unquote. Nick Saban's a name, obviously, that gets thrown out there. But is there somebody that comes to mind? Because it's not going to be just giving rah-rahs and just being a figurehead. Like, there's some real work that has to be done and some real legal business and some rules that have to be enforced. And can teams who already comprise the NCAA and create these rules only to get popped for these rules and then sue actually operate under a structure when they can't operate under the current one? So I know that's a lot there, but I think you understand where I'm coming from here.
Yeah, I don't have a specific person. I have a type of person, and I think of a former pro sports commissioner, someone who's dealt with all these things before, because in the NFL or the NBA or in Major League Baseball, you have to deal with all these issues. And now they're a little bit different because they have collective bargaining. I don't know that we'll ever get to that in college football, but at least you have an organized structure. You have a calendar, and you have certain rules and guidelines that everyone has to follow. And so I think somebody of that ilk, I don't like the former coach model, because I feel like the former coach model will end up just doing what the coaches want. And right. I don't like a current conference commissioner, because they're going to serve the interest. Because if it's a current conference commissioner, we know where that's going to go. It's going to be either Tony Petitti or Greg Sankey. And the way that they have conducted themselves in the last year plus doesn't make me believe that they're going to look out for the greater good of everybody in FBS or in Division I. And so I don't want to go that way either. I think someone who has been a pro sports commissioner, who has dealt with these levels of issues, but you also have to be able to navigate the legal side of this and the student side of this. So that it's a unique part of it. But you would have to have a pro sports commissioner with a strong staff, and there would be nothing wrong with having a Saban as part of maybe a deputy and maybe some other people, university presidents, other people who have been part of the system and understand it. But I think the leader has to be someone that's not necessarily attached to the current model, but knows what the finished product looks like.
It's a lot on the plate, man. Here we have this settlement around the corner, the Title IX decision or ruling that came in earlier this week. And then the OTAs that might become a deal, which I think is a great idea. Chris Kleiman brought that up to us back in the summer. And then this, maybe a football czar or someone like that. But great stuff, Sam, as always. So what is next for you? Waiting for the portal to open back up, or any kind of synopsis? We're going through each team in the Big 12, just their schedule and a little bit. No projections or whatever, but what's next for you?
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time on the phone this month, just catching up with people, coaches and staffers, and people who I haven't talked to, athletic directors, over the course of the last couple of months. Because like I said, when the portal opened and the college football playoff began, those were the two things my attention was focused on. So I'm spending a lot of time this month just catching up with those folks. And we'll be, obviously, spring football, we'll keep an eye on it. I don't think we cover it quite the same way we used to, just because I feel like it's fallen down in importance a little bit, but we'll definitely keep an eye on it. And then also prepping for the April portal window, because that's when the next round of player movement will be. So I'll spend some time doing that as well. And all of us are prepping for this house settlement. And if and when it gets approved in early April, preparing some coverage and stories along those lines. So plenty to do and plenty on the docket for the next 6 weeks, 2 months.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend and keep getting back to what you need to take care of personally. And also some of the rearranging, I'm sure, stuff around the house that the wife wants you to do. And, of course, those 2 great kids.